Okay, 'tis the hour, and we want to welcome you to the Lebanon Planning Commission monthly meeting and ask you to stand for a flag salute, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and Kelly, would you call the roll?
Yes. Commissioners Engelford? Here. Miller?
Here.
Fountain? Here. McLean? Here. Baxter?
Here.
Brashears?
Here.
Vice Chair Gary Kunarski?
Here.
And Chair Robertson.
Here.
Always here too.
And Commissioner Miller, I had it written down.
Signature.
I can tell she's forgotten me. I need to take a hint.
It is on my list.
Okay.
It's a great start to my night, everybody.
I assume everybody's had an opportunity to look at the minutes from February. Is there any additions, corrections? Hearing none, then the minutes will stand approved as presented. Although it's not on our agenda, I'm going to throw it in anyway. If there's anybody with us this evening that wishes to address the Planning Commission with an item that is not on the agenda, this would be the time to come forward, sign in, and address the Planning Commission. Okay, seeing no movement, then we will move on to our scheduled agenda. And I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney.
Thank you. Tonight's hearing will be pursuant to ORS 197.797, the quasi-judicial hearing procedure set out in Oregon law. At the start of each hearing, I will ask the commission members to disclose any any ex parte communications, conflict of interest, or bias. The applicable substantive criteria for this hearing will be addressed in the staff report. Testimony, which is welcome, may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria that are outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, and the city's land use regulations. Any issue raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient enough to allow the commission and parties an opportunity to respond. Please note that failure to raise an issue, including any constitutional issue, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. With that, you can ask the commission for conflicts of interest, bias, or ex parte communications. Okay.
All right. Then we will open public hearing, planning file PD 224-01, subdivision -24-02, and ask the planning commissioner if there's any ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias. Okay, seeing none, just a reminder to the Planning Commission and to our guests tonight, if you plan to testify, be sure that you speak into the microphone so that it can be heard by everybody. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to Kelly for a staff report.
Happy to share my screen. Okay. So before everybody tonight is a proposed 122 lot, 9-tract subdivision. The proposed project area is on the south side of Crowfoot, east of Hillview Drive. You can see on the aerial map the highlighted area of the project area. The property is within city limits, and it is currently undeveloped. It is generally in a partially developed area that is surrounded by areas that are in county within the urban growth area and parts of the area that are outside of the urban growth area to the south. And then also area that is within city limits to the east. And the areas that are within the county but in the urban growth area to the north and to the west are generally improved with large lot, single-family home areas. The area to the east is within city limits, zoned residential mixed density, and is currently used mostly for agricultural purposes, but there is a single-family residence there as well. And then, as I said, to the south is a natural resource area that is outside of the urban growth boundary within county land. The property is accessible by public utilities that can be extended to the development site. And so it is able to be urbanizable and developed. For the proposed development, as I said, it is a 122 lot proposed development. Access would be off of Crowfoot Road with a single access point on Crowfoot to service the 122 lots. Per fire code purposes for a subdivision of this size, there does need to be a secondary access point in case there is an emergency. And so as part of the subdivision proposal, a secondary access point is proposed. I'm not sure if you can see clearly my pointer, but in sort of this southern third of the property, along Carroll Street, there would be a emergency access point to meet the secondary access for fire purposes. This is an emergency access only. It would not be utilized for regular traffic purposes. And so it would only be used if the fire department deems it necessary. For the purposes of the project, there are two applications under review. It is a plan development application. The project is triggered for the plan development because it is over 25 acres in size. But it is also proposing over 25 lots, and it is also proposing a phased development over, I believe, 7 or 8 years as well. And so because of the phased development, the size of the property and the number of lots, it automatically triggers a plan development application. And then because it is a subdivision, it's proposing a subdivision application. As part of the plan division application process, the plan division application allows for a flexing or minor variations of our code when the proposal is trying to either preserve natural areas or they're enhancing outdoor recreational areas, or it's for the general betterment of the development. In this instance, you can see on the property, there are several areas of tracts of land with these hatched marks that are wetlands. And these areas are, the lighter hatch marked areas are the areas that are being proposed to be preserved in place. And so with that preservation of the wetlands and that open space, to be able to maintain the amount of residential units and lots that they would have been able to obtain without the wetlands in place, the development is proposing to have a bit of flex in the lot width and the lot area in some instances to be able to get that same amount of units. They are also proposing on the south end of the property a trail and a half basketball court to provide a recreational area, to provide an outdoor amenity as an enhancement as well, to provide that additional benefit for the planned development area. And so as that's a tool within the plan development area to provide that flexibility, that is an additional request as part of that application. As part of the street layout, as you can see, you have Crowfoot Road, which this is obviously not situated in north-south, but it's the best way we can lay out so you can see the area. You have Crowfoot Road. The main access points would be from Crowfoot Road, and the road would generally go in a north-south access. There are 5 side streets generally that are proposed, with 3 cul-de-sacs. And then there are, 6 side streets, pardon me. And then three through streets. There we go. Use my language. 3 through streets that would be proposed to continue the street system off to the east. As you saw on the aerial map, there is a large open field that is sort of the next developable area that is within city limits, that is within the urban growth boundary, that is intended for urbanization. And so we want to make sure that we are providing connectivity within the development area. And so these are 3 streets that would ultimately connect to any future development as part of that. In terms of traffic, this project is obviously a large project with 122 units. A traffic impact analysis was conducted to identify the number of trips per day and identify whether or not there was any off-site and on-site mitigation that would need to be done to ensure that traffic patterns would be able to continue to move smoothly through the area. That traffic analysis was included in the packet for everybody to review, and the conclusions were included within the staff reports to include front and center. I'm not going to read all of the conclusions, but generally speaking, the findings and the recommendations of the traffic impact analysis were as follows. Number 1, the study of the intersections, which was the intersection specifically of the subdivision to Crowfoot Road, and then the intersection of Cascade, Central, and Crowfoot, that 3-way intersection that they have there, were the major areas that were identified for study. Those intersections, even with this development, are identified to still be able to meet traffic flow requirements and patterns per the City of Lebanon and Lynn County operating standards during weekday AM and PM peak hours under existing and future traffic conditions. The traffic impact analysis identified that no capacity-based mitigation needs were required at the studied intersections, and that no safety-based mitigations were identified at the study intersections. They did identify that there were improvements that can be made at the Crowfoot Central and Cascade Drive intersection. That is a county intersection, and that is under county jurisdiction. And so we have shared those suggested improvements with the county, and we'll be continuing to work with the county to make sure that they can make those improvements as well. And then beyond that, a stop sign at the intersection of Crowfoot and the new roadway is an identified improvement to be done. There is an identified almost 1,100 new vehicle trips per day that are identified as part of this project. That does sound like a lot. This is not going to be an instantaneous amount of trips. This project is proposed to be developed over an extended number of years. And so the build out is expected to be approximately an 8-year project. And so 1,100 trips per as total will allow for the neighborhood to slowly progress and absorb the trips, and allow for the area to be further analyzed as growth overall in the area is absorbed, and allows for us to continue to analyze the area as well. And so that is the traffic input. And then finally, in terms of utilities, the West Side Interceptor project was generally in this area. It went through Crowfoot. As part of this development, utilities would be extended along Crowfoot and then also throughout the development and through all of the street systems. And so that's overall the development. As part of the project, we of course did a public notification process, and we did receive written public comments as part of that. In total, we received 8 letters. 7 did state direct opposition. 1 letter did not state opposition, but did provide a number of questions. I am not going to directly speak to each written comment and written letter. I don't want to provide direct voice to them. That is their voice. We did provide those letters to the Planning Commission directly, to the applicant directly. We also posted those letters online for the public to review. But I will just identify the general themes of those letters. There was concern about traffic and speed on Crowfoot Road and how it will be exacerbated. As I identified, the traffic impact analysis was completed and did identify that no additional mitigation was required associated with the project for Crowfoot Road. There was concerns regarding loss of rural living and large lot neighborhood compatibility in comparison to what is there now. The city absolutely sympathizes that this is a rural community currently. This is an area that is currently within city limits. It is within the urban growth boundary. And so per state law processes and per the city's growth boundary, growth processes, this area is intended for urbanization. And so the proposal is identified for lot sizes for single-family homes, for townhomes, possibly for 0 lot line residential single-family homes, and for potential duplexes. This is not a development that is intended for apartments. This is not a development that is intended for heavy density. So this is a development that is very similar to the single-family neighborhood that is just down the street that was built on Jaden Drive and Joy Street and that kind of thing. So it is very similar to that type of development that's also on the fringe. But it is intended for the urbanization, and so this meets the city's code in terms of what's intended for urbanization within the city. But I do understand that it does affect that rural lifestyle living. In terms of drainage questions and concerns, the application and the plan do identify a tract for storm drainage retention. It is state law that identifies that a property cannot affect the historic flow rates off of a property. And so as part of the engineered plan review, the applicant is going to have to plan appropriately to ensure that it doesn't affect that. I understand that the applicant does have their engineer here that will be able to speak more eloquently on engineering than I will, and so they can probably speak more appropriately to that. And then there was a couple of comments on the strain of the city's infrastructure as a whole. The city does have infrastructure. Infrastructure is aging. Infrastructure needs to be replaced. But the city does have infrastructure that is expanding and growing and changing. And we are expanding and growing and changing and still meeting the needs of growth within the city. And so we have the capacity to allow for growth. And so we are not at a point where we're looking at moratoriums to stop growth because we're not able to meet the capacity at this point. And so that's what we can say at that. Next up, we do have a list of several questions, and I do think that we can probably go through the vast majority of them and answer most. And I think that we've answered a large portion of it as part of the report. that I will just go through and read them and answer them. Um, so why should the variance or deviations of lot size be granted and what's the purpose? I alluded to that in the report already. How will this subdivision upgrade our housing stock? The subdivision, like I said, is intended for single-family homes. As part of the application, it may be single-family homes, duplexes, townhomes, or zero lot line single-family homes. And the applicant has requested there to be that variance of types of housing to be able to provide for that mix of opportunity. And that mix of opportunity is what is needed within our housing needs analysis to be able to accommodate the overall growth and need based off of the capacity demands that we have identified for the next 20-year growth pattern within our city. And so that this is the type of development that we have not had come forward with our city that does fill that need. If they build, will we encourage the use of energy efficient building materials, and are we encouraging innovation design? Generally speaking, the property needs to meet building code, which already has general energy efficiency standards built into it. But we always encourage properties to use energy efficiency and innovative designs. But we do let the market dictate what the market needs to build to be able to bring forth buyers to the market. Is the subdivision considered orderly expansion? I already talked about this in terms of this is within our urban growth boundary. It's within the city limits, and so this fits the development code, and so yes, it is considered orderly expansion. What percentage of this is variety of housing versus single-family dwellings? The developer can speak directly to what type and the percentage, but it is set up again for single-family homes or duplexes or townhomes. Is this land functional for outdoor recreation and relaxation? It is a subdivision. It does have wetland areas, which is meant more for passive open space. But it does have that small trail and that outdoor recreational area to the south portion of the subdivision that is open for the subdivision to use for outdoor recreation. And then, of course, they will have their own private rear yards for their outdoor open space as well. Who is going to buy and rent these houses? And what's the demographic? And will they have an HOA? Yes, a homeowners association will be required. The rest of it, I will leave it up to the applicant to answer. Have we identified publicly owned properties that could be used for affordable housing? Yes, as states law, we annually identify property that is available, that is public land that's available for affordable housing. This land is privately owned land, so that is not subject to it. Has there been a traffic study done? Yes, we've identified that. How will this affect the emergency services with the county being across the street from city when it comes to an emergency? And when I call 911, who shows up? This does not change for anybody that is currently in the county. If you are in the county, when you call 911, you will continue to get county sheriff. This subdivision is already in city limits, and so if they called this 911, they would already get city police. The subdivision itself is in city limits, and so the subdivision will get response from city police. What is the plan for parking in the subdivision? Our parking is based off of residential unit type. So single-family homes requires 2 dwelling units, townhomes requires 2 dwelling units, zero lot lines, dwelling units. Scratch that, everybody. 2 parking spaces. There we go. So 2 parking spaces for each type of those dwelling units, and then duplexes require 1 parking space per unit for a total of 2 parking spaces per duplex building. And then we also have, as part of the development, that all public streets are being built to the width that would allow for parking on both sides of the street. So there would also be on-street parking provided as well. I'm getting through it, everybody. Hopefully this is helpful. Will it be the city or county's burden for ADA sidewalks, streetlights, stormwater, and road maintenance? The developer pays for the construction of the street, the utilities through the street, the installation of the street lights and the stormwater and all of that kind of stuff. Upon completion of the development, the sidewalks become the property owner's responsibility to maintain and replace. The street becomes the responsibility of the city. It becomes city property along with the street lights. And as part of this, if the subdivision does get built, as part of this, the city would take over jurisdiction of Crowfoot Road. And so the road becomes city jurisdiction as well. If an existing homeowner bordering the property has a well or septic failure, will permits be issued to maintain that well or will we have to hook up to city system? And how much will that cost the homeowner? So this is a county question. It is a county policy. But generally speaking, the county policy is that if you are within 300 feet of a city sewer system, then they will not issue you a new septic permit. But that is 300 feet from a sewer system that the city is going to allow you to connect to. So that is going to only be the sewer system on Crowfoot Road. And so just because you're on, say, Hillview Drive, your properties might be close to or within 300 feet of the new sewer line on the new roadway to the east, but we're not going to allow for sewer laterals to be crossing through people's private properties and all that kind of stuff. So the only sewer line that is able to be, that would be close to you would be off of Crowfoot Road. So it's really only the properties that are close to and adjacent to Crowfoot that would be subject to connection to the city sewer if your septics were to fail. But that is the county's jurisdiction and the county's determination about whether or not they would hold you subject to that. And then in terms of the cost, that is, again, a question that the county will have to help make that determination on. If an existing homeowner bordering the property decides to sell their home, will they be required to hook to city services before the buyer can get financing? And will the new homeowner need to take on that burden? Or will it be on the existing homeowner? Just categorically, no, that won't be a requirement. Will we know the environmental impact since it is wetlands and the proximity to wetlands, and has an environmental assessment been done? There are wetlands on the site. A wetland delineation has been done. You saw on the map here, the areas that are light in the tracks are the areas to be preserved. There's about 6 acres of wetlands on the site. The darker areas are the areas that are proposed to be filled or mitigated. And I believe that's I think that's about an acre and a half or so. The applicant can potentially tell you the full amount that are proposed to be filled. And that needs to go through the Department of State Lands and go through the full permitting process to make sure that is done appropriately per their standards. And once the Department of State Lands does the permitting and signs off on it, then it identifies that it is appropriately filled and is no longer an issue. And then how will stormwater from the subdivision affect neighboring wells? Again, stormwater needs to be maintained in the same manner of historic flows. And so you have this tract C along this western property line here because of the general slope of the property. And so this is where the stormwater detention would occur to make sure that it maintains the historic flow rates. Beyond that, I will leave more to the applicant to answer to make sure that they can discuss more fully. Will this increase flood risks? The property is not within the floodplain. And so as long as, again, the storm drainage meets the requirements of state law, no, it won't increase flood risks. What will be the impacts on local school enrollment? Of course, when you have new residential development, you also have a correlation to new school enrollment. The school district is of course aware of this development. We are in regular communication with the school district. They also get notifications of new development. And so they are aware of the growth patterns of the city, and they plan accordingly of anticipated growth of student population as the city grows as well. And so they are aware and able to accommodate. Will there be a bus stop? There's not one currently planned. And will the speed limit change on Crowfoot Road? It is possible that the speed limit will change. I'm not a speed expert, so I'm gonna stop talking and turn it over to Ron to answer that last question.
Well, that all depends, right? So speed limits are set. Talking to the mic. Oh, does it let me in there? Speed limits are set by how much traffic you have that goes at a certain percentage of a speed. So we used to do it off the 85th percentile. So that means 85% of your cars are traveling at X speed, and that's what your speed limits were set at. I think the percentiles changed. It's been a while since we've done a speed study. So we would look at that, you know, if we had a request, we do this quite often. If somebody has a request, hey, we want to lower the speed limit, we want the speed limit lowered, we would go out and put tubes out, run an analysis on it and see what that percentage is where people are traveling. And from there, we would make that determination on whether we should apply for a speed limit change or not. But until we know that, I mean, it's likely that it could as it develops a little bit more, but chances are you're going to see most people will drive it at the appropriate speed where they feel comfortable, and that's going to be where your speed limit's going to be. That's where it's going to be set. They're within 5 miles an hour up or down. You're not going to pick off the people that are 10, 15, 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. They're changing the speed limit at that point doesn't do you any good anyway. So that's kind of the answer on that.
So there's the written comments that we received, the answers to the questions that we received ahead of time. And that concludes staff's report. So we can answer any additional questions that you might have.
Any questions for staff?
On page 17 of the traffic report, that intersection there, Central Drive, Crowfoot, I know that is a source of concern. I know they made some recommendations for changing to that intersection. What's the likelihood that some of these recommendations might be implemented? Ron, I guess that's a question to you.
Yeah, so we've sent this to Lynn County. Those are things that should happen now.
Yeah,
And so
of course,
those
yeah.
those are Lynn counties. That's their intersection. The consultant Kittleson went through this process and basically asked us, hey, do you want us to put this in the recommended TIA? And we said yes, please do so. We've sent those to Lynn County. I'll also say that we're working actively with Lynn County to make improvements to that intersection. The problem is the cost, right? So we're looking at grant alternatives and different things that we can do there to improve that intersection, and we'll continue to do so. So hopefully they make the improvements. We'll stay on them and keep reminding them, but we don't have the jurisdiction to go make them. So
These changes just look exciting because that's just been a intersection for a long time.
So we have conceptual drawings that show a roundabout in that location. We purchased property from the school district, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. So we have all that corner property so that we can build a roundabout. That's really the only solution to that intersection with the way everything's configured there. So yes, that would probably be the preferred alternative to that. You couldn't really do a traffic light there or anything else, or to try and align it, you would have to buy homes. And I think the way we've got it set right now is minimal impact to everybody that's out there once we get to that point.
If Lynn County would make these changes, that might get us by until there could be a roundabout to help that flow, but
Yes,
yeah.
correct.
Great, thank you.
Ron, the extension of the infrastructure, will it be the same standard as the West Side Interceptor?
Yes, so as part of this project, they are required to, right now, the West Side Interceptor sits at Hillview Lane, and has dead-ended there. They are required to extend that, to and through their development. And they will do that as well as, install a 16-inch water line per our master plan on Crowfoot Road for the portion through their development.
Okay.
Yes,
Good.
both of those will.
Any other questions for staff?
I have a quick question here. So, on the deviations that have been requested, these minor deviations, um, the justification says that allowing these deviations from the development code standard allows for greater preservation of natural resources, more housing options, and overall more open space. Can you elaborate on what would take place if these deviations were not allowed?
If the deviations were not allowed, they would ultimately result in less lots of the subdivision, which ultimately might result in no subdivision. And I would ultimately say that the applicant might be able to respond appropriately to that, of what it might result into. But the deviations are generally intended to allow for the lots to sort of be designed around the wetlands to preserve them to the greatest extent possible.
Fewer lots, in my mind, equals more open space. So I'm having, I guess, the overall space, open space justification seems maybe like it doesn't align with increasing the density inside that area of the housing density. But, all right, yeah, no, we'll let the applicant explain more about that.
So I do have one more question. The emergency access onto Carroll is actually part of phase two. Will it not be connected in phase one? Will there be no emergency access in phase one?
I think that the fire district is going to be reviewing the plan as part of phase one. And if the phase one trigger based off of the total area and the number of lots in phase one triggers the secondary access, they will have to provide it. So the conceptual phase one and phase two and phase three are provided as part of this. When the applicant ultimately provides their first phase and the total proposal of that first phase, the fire district is going to identify whether or not that fire access is going to be required or not. It is based off of a total number of units that I don't remember what it is. I think it's in the 30s.
So in other words, it may or may not.
It may or may not be triggered on the first phase. It will absolutely be triggered on the second phase. But the applicant will absolutely know,
Okay.
I believe.
And each phase is platted as it begins? So in other words, they're only going to plat phase one, and then they'll plat phase two and play phase three as construction progresses?
They could do it that way, yes. As part of the plan development, it provides that flexibility that they don't have to plat it all at one time.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, then we will open our public testimony portion of our hearing and invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward, sign in, state your names, please.
You don't have a sign-in sheet, but
Those signing cards.
the cards?
Yeah.
So, good evening, Lebanon Planning Commission. My name is Laura LaRock with Udell Engineering and Land Surveying, and joining me today is Brian Vandetta. So, as always, Kelly and staff does a great overview of the application. I will try to keep my presentation brief and highlight just some specific questions that have come up or items I just wanted to further clarify. So Don, I think you hit my starting point right off. So what we are proposing is a phased development. I know that term may not be familiar with, how that's actually applied on the ground. So on this particular one, instead of building 122 lots all at once, a phased development plan allows to build a certain number of units over a period of time. In the application submittal, it includes up to a 10-year period, which is the maximum that you can permit for a proposal moving forward. So on this one, we show phase lines within the subdivision. So on the tentative plat, you can actually see where the phases are called out on the lots. So the first phase, which is anticipated to occur typically in a 3-year period, is about 47 lots. The second phase and then that next 3 years or 6-year period would be about 33 additional lots. And that third and final phase, up to that maximum of 10-year construction period, would be additional 42 lots. So I think that's important to point out this evening, that these impacts that we're talking about, we plan for because it's anticipated to occur at the end of the construction, but it is not something that folks are going to see overnight. Folks within that first 47 lots, that's a pretty typical subdivision size. The capacity for traffic impacts and things of that nature are far less than what we're seeing for those final numbers. So at full build out, the city of Lebanon will look very different in 10 years. We will likely have many roadway improvements that have occurred, the utility improvements. A lot of these are already identified and researched in the city master planning process. So the city maintains master plans for the wastewater system, the water system, storm drainage, transportation. All of these unique components to development are researched and planned out for a 20-year planning horizon. Even the zones and how they're applied in the city actually anticipates the development and growth that's reflected in these master plans. So the city is very forward thinking as over the old state, because we're master planned in this state, to look for potential development and what that looks like down the road so that we're prepared for when it comes. In terms of the subdivision, it's a large property. So as Kelly mentioned, 26 total acres. Most of that is, about 6 of that is wetlands that's been delineated as wetland area. And about 5 acres of that will in the end be dedicated roadway. So when you subtract that 6 acres into 5, the total development site actually reduces quite a bit. There's, I guess, 2 main reasons to use a master plan or a plan development application style. This allows for the engineer and planning service to actually look at all the elements such as water, sewer, infrastructure needs, transportation system holistically for the development from the beginning instead of kind of doing it piecemeal along a period of time. The other kind of reason that the application was submitted that way is Kelly mentioned. There's a provision in the development code that allows large acre parcels to look at development in this comprehensive manner. When it's over 25 acres in size, when it has over 25 lots, and when multi-phasing is proposed. So that's the purpose of the plan development. Because we're going through a plan development route, and because the site is heavily constrained by natural resources, there are some minor deviations to the code that's been requested. Deviations to the code are also used in a standard subdivision process. So even on a subdivision that has a number of lots, it allows you to vary the areas of lot size as long as the average minimum lot size is maintained. So what that means is that if you have a number of lots that are anticipated to be about 5,000 square feet on a minimum, in a traditional subdivision application, you can submit for a few of those lots to be in that 4,000 square foot lot area size, or on the higher end to the 7,000 or plus area size. So that allows for different size lots. So it's not that cookie cutter subdivision feel, allows for different housing sizes to be placed on those lots. So to just give it some variability. So the deviation that we're asking for to vary lot width, in some instances just lot size, again, just allows for each lot to be a little bit more unique, allows for an array of housing types to be placed on these. And it also allows, if you have less area in width or in overall size, it decreases the impact on the wetlands. So if you were to plan this subdivision in a different way, have each of the lots meet the minimum 50 width lot standard. Each of those lot areas would grow, and then the boundaries of the lots would actually grow, and those would encroach further into the wetlands. So it wouldn't necessarily decrease lots if these deviations were denied, but it could possibly further impact those natural resources that are set aside currently to be preserved. So we talked a little about those 3 deviations just quickly. 50 feet is the normal width for a single-family detached or duplex dwelling unit. In some instances, the lots are within the 40 or less than that 50 width standard. So what's being proposed here is just to let all residential housing types, anything kind of below a triplex, to be placed on a lot that either has a 40-foot width or greater. So what that means, I guess, on the ground is if you have a 40-foot width lot, that allows you to build a 0 lot line, an attached, a townhome, a single family, or a duplex on those lots, instead of restricting those to just townhouse development. We're also asking to waive a 500 square foot requirement that's added to corner lots. I think this has been brought up in previous planning commission meetings. Traditionally, an extra area has been added to corner lots because corner lots have larger setback requirements because they have 2 street frontages. In the more modern code and allowing middle housing types, so things like townhomes or 0 lot line or attached, that extra 500 feet isn't necessarily needed to meet those setback standards because the housing that could be constructed on those could be a little bit more narrow or a little smaller in size. So we feel just in general that code might need to be reviewed in the future to take a look at, but asking it just in this application to be waived altogether. Again, because the proposal includes allowing the development of multiple different housing types. I know there's been a question about what is going to be developed. Development is not proposed with the subdivision. When you're looking at a 10-year planning horizons, it's hard to predict what the market's going to want in that time frame. So what has been anticipated for the development is standard single-family homes typically prevail. We suspect that we'll see a lot more attached 0 lot line housing perhaps, just because that makes housing a little bit more affordable and attainable to a wider market. But at this point in the time, the developer does not have a specific dwelling type scheduled for any of the lots. Really have to get through the planning process first, start to look at infrastructure cost, and see what pencils out for the market at the end. I think with that, I'll wrap up my portion of it, and I'll turn it over to Brian, who will talk more about utilities and stormwater and traffic.
Super. Thank you, Laura. So good evening. Brian Vendetta with Udell Engineering. So there were a few questions primarily that revolved around traffic. I think it's been well explained by Kelly and staff that we did have a traffic engineer look at the project. The TIA did conclude that while there were a number of trips generated through the subdivision, that there was no net negative impact on any of the infrastructure that was studied to require any mitigations. If there's any further questions about the TA, I'd be glad to answer them. We believe that the submitted application fully addresses the traffic impacts that are going to be generated by the subdivision. The other question that was raised revolved around storm drainage. So I'd like to take a few minutes because I think that's probably one of the main concerns, and it's one of the main things that we focus on when we do a subdivision is making sure that it's properly drained and it doesn't have any adverse impacts on either the upstream properties or the downstream properties. So Kelly, if you'd be so kind, maybe just bring up the overall subdivision layout, would you please? Sheet glasses on.
C2.
C2. It's not the drainage sheets, I understand, but it's the one sheet that does show the entire development on one sheet, and I think I can explain kind of what's going on better with that sheet. Didn't mean to wake you up.
Causing me issues. Sorry. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
If it's not available, I can just kind of walk through because all of the commissioners do have it in their packet.
I got it.
Oh, super. see if this is, okay. That pointer doesn't show up there. So basically, I'll just start by describing the general lay of the land with respect to topography and how the surface drainage occurs across this property, and then ultimately ends up affecting most of the neighbors to the west currently. So currently today, shallow swales litter the property, which is indicative of the wetland patterns that were mapped as well. Each one of the wetlands that were mapped across the property are fairly linear. And within the center of those linear wetlands, like I said, there is a shallow depression. This general drainage basin extends east in some areas east of Central Avenue, so there's a fairly large contributing area. So we looked at a few things. One, we knew that we were going to have to capture the upstream water and allow it to pass and comply with Oregon drainage law with that respect. And two, we knew that we were going to have to capture our internal storm waters and release them downstream in a way that mimics historic drainage patterns as well, making sure that we don't increase the flow rates, making sure that we don't adversely impact the neighboring properties to the west. So in doing that, our original study took us west about 1,300 feet down the street to find a discharge point that was low enough that would allow us to design an effective system to drain the subdivision. So our plan is to extend a storm pipe from the large ditch on the north side of Crowfoot Road, west or east within the right-of-way from the west. That storm pipe would be sized accordingly to drain our development. It would be sized accordingly to also drain future developments that are upstream. What that means is that all of the stormwater within the 122 lots will be captured in our system, and it will be piped down Crowfoot Road. All of that water that was in those footprint of those lots currently drains onto the neighboring properties to the west. So they'll see an improvement when this subdivision is built. But what we will be doing is we'll be taking the upstream waters to the east of us, and we'll be passing them through those wetlands and allowing them to continue to go west at their current stormwater flow rates. So we won't be capturing those waters because it gets a little complicated. I'm going to do my best to explain it. We're going through a wetland permit. That was already mentioned. In going through that wetland permit, the state and the federal stormwater guidelines have to be met. They require us to pre-treat our stormwaters that we generate with our created impervious surfaces. That's what our stormwater quality swale along the west property line is in place for. They also require us to capture the water and route it through a flow control manhole to limit the discharge rate even further than what the local city level requires. The state and the NMFS, National Marine Fisheries requirement, is that we are allowed to release 42% of a 2-year storm event under today's current conditions. And that's our lower limit. And then our upper limit is a 10-year storm. So the upper level limit matches the cities. The lower level limit adds another layer of, I guess, mitigation provision for the stormwaters we're generating with our impervious surface. So you don't look like you're going to sleep yet, so I'll keep going. So in a nutshell, I mean, to wrap it all up and bring it together, we are going to capture all of the stormwater within our subdivision. We're going to route it through our system, which will be a flow control manhole, a water quality swale, and then we have a long linear detention pond along the western property line that is an offline system, meaning our stormwaters won't go through that and keep that basin saturated. It will surge back into it and only encompass water when we have an extreme storm event, which will happen with the state and federal guidelines several times a year, and then it will fully drain when it's done. Then we will also be passing the waters that are currently draining from the east through our development, through those wetland corridors that we're avoiding. We'll culvert them under our streets and we'll allow them to continue downstream in the natural drainage patterns that they are doing today, but they'll just be a little bit less water because we're taking the 26 acres roughly and sending it down Crowfoot Road. Fully compliant with all of Oregon's drainage laws, fully compliant with the Oregon DEQ's requirements to get our wetland permits, and fully compliant with the NOAA Fisheries Slopes 5 mandates. I think I'm going to stop there and just see if anybody has any questions or would like me to clarify something that I've explained.
So there's areas that are proposed to be filled. And I don't know enough about the state lands and their rules and stuff about that, but theoretically, would it be allowed for the whole property to be filled so that there were no wetlands and the whole thing was completely developable?
That's a super question. Theoretically, yes. So when we go through a wetland permitting process, there is a portion of that process where we're supposed to demonstrate to the agencies that we have practiced avoidance and minimization, meaning that we have efficiently developed the site and minimized our impact on the wetlands and preserved as much as is feasibly possible. So that sounds like the answer would be black and white, no. But I've done many projects where we have mitigated for the entire wetlands on a piece of property. It just gets a little bit more difficult to get through the process to do it.
So what you're saying is, even though there are wetlands on this property, it could essentially be developed the same as if there were no wetlands. You just have to be a little bit more careful about filling out certain permits and what have you, and mitigation things. Is that true, or do I have this wrong?
No, I think you're on the right path. So it is possible.
Okay.
It's not as likely as it is as what we're proposing. That might be a better way to say it. So we, for every wetland square foot that gets disturbed, my client has to pay for a mitigation credit in a wetland mitigation bank. So currently those credits are costing between $130,000 and $160,000 an acre, depending on what bank you go to. So that's why I said there's an efficiency balance between, do I disturb all of them or do I disturb enough of them to make this work? And the agency doesn't have a maximum. It's just going to be more difficult to get through their process. And unless you've been through that process, and we've been through it many times, it's tough to explain really what that means other than you'll lose more sleep, you'll have more headaches, and you may or may not get there. They're always going to push you to avoid and disturb less when you go through that process.
So ultimately, leaving the wetlands undisturbed is a cost savings in saving money on mitigation credits. Is that true?
It saves on mitigation credits, but I would venture to say that you're going to return more of that in land value and development. That's why developers
And
are
this
able to do it. They can still afford to pay the mitigation credits, and then they can get more lots and make that return happen.
And I think there's a dollar-cent approach to take a look at it, and then there's the, the natural preservation of a habitat to look at as well. So preserving these areas does provide so that you don't have complete development of your city. You have some open space for recreation or just enjoyment, as well as the native habitat benefits as well. So there's a dollar and cent approach, and then there's kind of the natural resource value as well that you weigh into these.
And that's a great point because we are preserving almost 24% of the property by leaving those wetlands undeveloped.
Theoretically, though, if you had larger lot size and homeowners just chose to allow that soggy part of their property to be natural, it would accomplish the same thing.
The agencies won't allow you to plat a wetland without going through and mitigating for it. They don't understand, or they don't trust that the homeowner is going to stay out of that wetland. They'll make you leave it in a preserved tract or record a covenant easement over it and keep it out of your development footprints.
So maybe I'm confused at this point. Preserved tracts would be required of undisturbed wetlands. I thought if we wanted to, we could pay enough and
Well, you asked me a question, is it is it feasible or is it possible? And I told you it's possible to disturb them all, and I told you it's very unlikely that we'd be able to disturb them all.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian or Laura?
I have one, Brian.
Yeah.
What method, with the water in those delineated areas, if it's flowing to the west, what means would be used to go under the roadway there for drainage?
Yep, so we'd be doing probably like a shallow box culvert to get it underneath the roadway. So we, in fact, in our preliminary grading plan, we are elevating the roadway through those wetland areas so that we can pass the surface water under them in a culvert.
Okay, any other questions?
I have another question about the phased approach.
Yeah.
Theoretically, if, so there was a 10-year time period, correct? If something happened and the development did not get accomplished within that 10-year period, what would happen?
Typically go back through the plan review process, either a subdivision or whatever review process is in place at that time. So your approval, like any other project, has a time that it has to be completed. If it's not completed in that time and there's no extension granted, then you go back to the drawing board. You're either resubmitting that development plan or the development plan changes, but you're going back through a review process based on current standards at that time.
And not to, this is one of those God forbid questions, but God forbid that the developer should go bankrupt or something like that, and then, you know, there might be foreclosures or whatever else. You know, and who knows what's going to happen? We got an election coming up. We got all kinds of things. We might have aliens landing. Who knows? But you know, if we have some kind of catastrophe that derails this thing, what, and it's only half complete, how would that be resolved to move forward? You know,
So the creation of lots is not complete until the infrastructure is in place. So the developer would need to make the roadway improvements, bring sewer, water, everything that you would need to serve lots before you actually record a final plat that enables you to sell a lot to somebody. So typically those improvements are done within that first phase. So they complete the infrastructure work to file the first plat to create those lots. And then in your scenario, you know, if you're saying what happens within that phase 2 or phase 3 doesn't move forward, in no instance is a lot created and somebody is not having adequate infrastructure put in. The infrastructure is put in before they're able to buy a lot to build a home.
well, I guess is what I'm asking is if we get halfway through it, there are homeowners, but the HOA is defunct. The people involved that submitted the permits are no longer available to pick up the phone and talk to anybody. And there's unpaid property taxes, et cetera. Where does this go? How can the city or whoever's involved pick up the pieces and move forward to deal with what's left? And maybe at that point, it doesn't make sense to continue developing because it's not financially feasible at that point.
So we require a bond, a performance bond. So any developer that comes in, so the infrastructure, let's say you walked off, didn't complete it or left a mess, we require a bond. So we could finish that. As for unpaid property taxes, that'll just go through a foreclosure process. So the county would then foreclose because there's unpaid property taxes and an auction. That's typically how that would work. So, but we do require a bond on all that stuff. So the bond is for full public improvements. So that basically we make sure it gets done.
Laura, I have a question for you concerning lot sizes and the variances. I mean, we're talking maybe 0 lot line clearance for some homes and things like that. But these aren't variances that aren't consistent with other subdivisions that are going on, correct? They're pretty much standard variances that were being considered.
Yeah, the standard subdivision application, so if it wasn't a planned development, would allow you to vary the lot sizes within that subdivision to have some smaller, some mid-range, and some larger. On this one, the deviation from the extra square footage for a corner lot, that's unique to a planned development. And then allowing for a variety of home types to take place on a 40 width lot, that's a little bit, that one's tied to the planned development as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, if the deviations weren't approved, and that would limit the development on those lots just to attached housing and townhomes. And sometimes you can build a single-family detached home in that same footprint, but have yards on both sides, and that's appealing in some markets and to some individuals.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before we move into the second part of our public testimony, a little bit of housekeeping. I have 3 testimony cards, and I don't know if there's any more that should be turned in. Could I see a show of hands for those that plan on testifying? Okay, so I've got all 3 of them. All right, good. Before we move into that part, I've asked our city attorney if he would give just a little bit of a primer about what we can consider as far as testimony. So I'm going to turn it back over to him for a moment.
Thank you, Commissioner. We do appreciate the people being here in the public process. Too often, the decisions are made and there's nobody in the audience. So we do appreciate you being here. As I stated at the beginning, this is what's called a quasi-judicial hearing procedure. It's different than like a legislature. It's quasi means almost. So in practical terms, the commission is acting almost like a judge. And what that means is there's not cross-examination. You're not sworn before you have to give testimony. So there's a lot of things that are kind of like a judicial hearing, but then there's some things that aren't. So the commission's role is unique in that they are limited generally to applying the law to the facts, just like if you had a jury instruction, you're acting as a juror. And so they can all have a different opinion on what the facts are. In other words, if there's testimony that have disputed facts and one person saying one thing and one person saying another, there can be disagreements as to what the facts are, but what there can't be necessarily disagreement to is what the law is. And the law is guided by both the Oregon, well, all the way starting at the federal constitution down through the state constitution, the statutes, and then ultimately the Lebanon's comprehensive plan, which sets out the guideline for what criteria need to be met for approval of a land use decision in Lebanon, which is the comprehensive plan is unique to the locality, and it's adopted by the city council as a policy document and also as, again, guidelines to what developers or people that want to use their property can expect based on criteria that they know they have to meet. And so the commission, I have to tell them, and I know it's often hard, is bound by law, even if they don't like it. In other words, they take the law and they say, well, I don't think that's the way it should be. They have to disregard that. They have to look at the facts that are presented and apply the law, which in this case is the state statutes and the comprehensive plan, to that those facts to that law, even if they don't like some part of it. But that comprehensive plan is adopted, as I said, after a lot of public comment, public hearings, and and there's a process to change that, but that's also time consuming and it's not an easy thing. So as the commission deliberates and asks questions and proceeds, they're guided by those criteria that have been set out in the staff report and in the comprehensive plan. But again, I'm not saying they all have to agree. Well, here's the facts and here's the law, and let's just get this over with. There can be dispute about what the facts are. So I guess what I would say ultimately is your comments are welcome. We want to know what you have to say. But understand that the criteria that we've talked about tonight for approval are the issues that will really make a difference. In other words, those are the only things that the commission can consider as they ultimately make their decision. So hopefully that's clear as mud, is what I wanted to tell Brian when he was talking about his water stuff. So.
Okay, thank you. So we will start with testimony in favor of the application. Then we will move to testimony in opposition of the application. And then if there is any testimony in opposition, then the applicant or applicant's representative will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony. So with that then, is there anybody willing to testify in favor of the application? Seeing no movement, then we will move on to anybody willing to testify. And I actually have 3 comment cards, or testimony cards. So I have Steve Brott and Diana Brott. If you want to come forward together, you can, or if you want to come individually, you can. If you would come forward, state your name and sign in, please.
They already signed in.
Those are the sign-in.
What did I say?
Those are the sign-in.
They
They
said-
don't have sign-in sheets anymore.
No,
Those are their new sign-in sheets.
I'm Steve Brott.
Okay, go
I'm
for it.
born and raised Lebanon. My dad, born and raised Lebanon, put him
Oh, I'm sorry.
to rest today, a matter of fact. I went through all the Lebanon school systems, raised my family here, 2 adults, raising family. Just on Hillview, I lived on Walker for 27 years and raised my kids. We wanted a little bit of elbow room. We go just outside. And why does everybody love Lebanon? Because you got a little bit of elbow room. But we get out there and everybody's been bringing in the wetland, wetland about the water system. But what about the wetland, the wildlife back there? We have 20 deer on our property at times. We got, band-tailed pigeons, turkeys, birds, everything. They do set land aside and it's been there, for 7 years. And all this wildlife gets used to using the fields and stuff. And there's not many places they can. And I know that probably don't sound like a lot, but it's pretty, when that developer came, he came down to our street and he wanted a fire access. And he told me that, you guys are calling it 3 phases and 122 houses. He gave me the original drawing and he's gonna do this 1, then 2, then 3. You guys are saying 10 years. Well, that's just for the drawing we are now. He's planning on doing 2 more of those. He said there's gonna be 342 houses in there. So we're lying to the people because I already got it might not be the perfect drawing, but he said, we're gonna have 350 houses in there. We're not gonna have 122. You go past Crowfoot and you see that lane down there that they got 5-acre lots, nice houses and stuff. Maybe we'd go with that. We don't want to look like we're driving into Salem on all these little, that's my, And, I took it on myself. I printed 150 of these because they only sent it to very few people that border that field. I went and knocked on every door, talked to people, and, a lot of them didn't even know it. Like I went to school teachers and they said, what? They said, our schools are, when we grew up, we had how many grade schools in Lebanon? How many, Queen Anne, Green Acres. She said, my classes right now are overfilled. I got 42 people at 7 Oaks and every one of those houses would be in that school zone too. I could go on traffic and all that. You can only do so much. But that's just my thing, we love the nature, we love the animals. We're just kicking them farther. The scenery, just people that come to Lebanon, even if we do that highway that goes around, and comes out there, they want to go look at the hills of Lebanon. They don't want to look at just, houses and communities and, but. My thing was a lot of the wildlife, it's unbelievable. I could go down the list. Me and the neighbors watched bobcats. There's a bobcat, 3 kittens last year. We see cougars, we have elk, we have deer. Those geese that we took all that habitat away from Champion, they come out in that field every year. They have babies, they're out there. Might not sound like much, but I mean, people got to take that stuff in consideration too. There's not little plots set, aside once in a while. We're just, that's not Lebanon, but
Okay,
that's, basically what I mean, I go on about a ton of things, but maybe my wife, should get us some point thing, and I just told her I'd do the basic things. But anyway,
so you brought up about the notice. Kelly, could you talk a little bit about what's required for notice?
Yeah, so state law sets the requirements for how these quasi judicial hearings are noticed. And so for a property, you take the boundary of the property and then you take a radius of 250 feet around that property. And any portion of a property that's within that 250-foot radius, you send out a written notice directly to that property radius mark. And so we do a direct mailing to those people and property owners within that 200-foot radius. But then we also post it on the city's website. We post it on our social media page. And then we have it also posted at our library and the senior center so that people are also aware when they use our city facilities as well. So
why would the city of Lebanon, I mean, I know they can't see everything, but why would they make that? Because what I was told is that 80 acres was set aside when they built Lowe's because they took a wetland there. So, I mean, but the wetland right before Sotaville cutoff there, that is, unbelievable. And, a lot of everything thrives there. So, when they build this house, and I can't blame them, I've been one of them, every kid, that's going to be their backyard. You guys can say you're putting wetlands in there. You're not going to have the normal wildlife come in the wetland that are in a subdivision. You're not, I mean, common sense, they're not going to come there. I mean, but that's just my 2 cents.
All right. Anybody have any questions for Steve?
we
Okay.
do appreciate hearing from the community.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Oh.
Okay, and Diana Broad?
Well, I probably might say some of the same things he did, but 6 years ago, I built my dream house at the end of a very beautiful and quiet neighborhood on Hillview Drive. And now because a rich man from Portland wants to come down and get even richer, that's all gonna be destroyed. I'm no longer gonna get to have a beautiful view in my backyard. I'm gonna get to look at the back of 122 houses. We already currently have, and I know they've talked about some of the drainage issues, but we already have a lot of flooding and drainage issues on our property as it is. And I feel like adding all of those houses is only going to make that worse. Even if they try to improve it, things like that just don't always work themselves out. Like it's going to affect something. He talked about the wildlife. We have wildlife almost every day. Deer, geese, turkeys, bantail pigeons, pheasants. You just don't. Those animals are just, I don't know where they're going to go at this point if we have another 122 houses behind us. It's going to destroy their natural habitat. I'm also concerned because it seems like the city of Lebanon is we're building everywhere. We're building tons of apartments. That's increasing traffic everywhere in the city, not just in our area. There's school overcrowding. I mean, some of the classes at the high school have upwards of 38 students in them. There's going to be students in those 122 houses that are going to need to go to school. Where are they all going to go? How is the city going to afford to build new schools because taxes are pretty high as it is already? My other concern is about grocery stores in the town of Lebanon. I mean, we're going to add 122 houses and all these apartments, but we have literally 2 grocery stores in this town. You go to the store at any given time, you wait in a line for like a half an hour just to get your groceries, especially if you hit it at the wrong time. It could be a 45-minute wait at Safeway. It just seems like the city is not really keeping up with the growth that this town has suddenly came upon in the last several years. And it's very concerning. There's gridlock in the traffic sometimes, depending on the time of day. I live on Hillview and trying to get off onto Crowfoot, like if you go in about 8 o'clock in the morning, there's school buses, there's traffic of kids, people trying to take their kids to school. You could sit there, 10, 15 minutes just to try to get out because you're waiting for different things of traffic to move so that you can actually get out safely. So that's basically my kind of 2 cents about it. It's very sad to me that something that I have moved to and truly love is just, I feel like it's just going to be destroyed just because somebody wants to make a few bucks. So that's my spiel.
Okay,
Thank
any
you for li-
questions for Diana?
Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
for listening.
Yep, thank you. And then the final card I have is Amanda Penner.
I'm Amanda Pinner. I'll try to stick to my notes because I was the one that provided the 3 pages of questions. I live, thanks. I live directly across the street from this proposed, what they say, it's supposed to be a unique subdivision. I disagree. I'm in the construction industry. I have been in the construction industry for over 18 years. I started at the bottom as a laborer. I am a single mom. He's 14. And even now, I don't want him to ride his bike down Crowfoot Road. I will not let him leave my home and go right towards Hillview. There is no shoulder on this road. I have called the Lynn County Sheriff's Office to find out the statistics because I've personally called 911 4 times, I think, since I've lived there. Every 7 weeks, there's an accident on Crowfoot Road where they want to build this 122 home, I don't care how long it takes them, subdivision. It is 45 right there. It changes from 35 to 45 right in front of that open field. About the wildlife that he was talking, I have tons of pictures of everything from fox to pheasant going through that property, and it's really neat to see. Lebanon turkeys are also out there. I believe, so now to my notes. I think the council granting the variance on lot size and width would make this property a unique circumstance when it doesn't have to be. I don't believe the small lot subdivision should qualify as a unique circumstance. I think this is a self-imposed hardship. The variance would cause adverse hardships in the surrounding homeowners, neighborhood, and wetlands. And there was a lot of talk of all the stormwater. I also, during our wet season, which is 90% of the year, I have a lot of standing water on my property. And I know this is going to be, utilities. We want to extend utilities. But I also took off the city's website that there are only 3 full-time employees tasked with open drainage way cleaning, dry well cleaning, televising, and manhole construction and repair. In addition, this crew of 3 people handles wastewater collection maintenance. I think that's a lot to ask of 3 people, and to add that burden onto them is just causing, I think we're building like too fast. I have looked up, our vacancy rate is, for homes is 9%, where our projected population growth is less than 3%. I have also looked through the 2019 housing analysis, and I was curious if what has went up apartment-wise, developmentally-wise, has been accounted for since 2019 with the proposal of this subdivision development. And our schools, we are considered a C- school, and I just think that we should try to improve on what we have now and house the people now with what we've already built, then approve this subdivision. I do understand growth, and I understand that growth is painful and it's uncomfortable. I can support growth, but I do not support giving an inch and wanting to take a mile, and which I think exactly what this is. There is only one street light on Crowfoot Road. It is at the corner of South Main and Crowfoot. There's no shoulder. The speed limit is 45 through most of it. I talked to the Lebanon Community School District office in their transportation division. They have 4 bus stops on Crowfoot Road. They did everything in their power to take away as many stops as they could on Crowfoot and South Main because it's so dangerous. And I'm curious, with the first phase having one access point for the kids that are going to be there, which doing the math, it should be about 110 kids in these homes. Is there going to be room for a bus to turn around? Are they going to have a bus stop? Where are the kids going to stand? Where, when it's dark out or foggy and people are going by at 45. Because it scares me, and just the accidents that we've had out there, it makes my son nervous. There's also only 1,056 foot of sidewalk on Crowfoot Road, which is 1.1 miles long. I think if we put that many homes out there, and even some of it that is put aside for wetlands, when kids want to play outside, where are they going to go? Because the closest public park is a 26-minute walk down Crowfoot with no sidewalks, no streetlights, with the speed limit at 45. And I know we have 21 full-time patrol officers for the city of Lebanon, and I am on the county side, and they would be on the city side. So when I call 911, it's the county. I called the county to find out how many full-time patrol they have, but I haven't received a call back, probably because they're understaffed. So that's my take on the whole thing. And I know that everybody got a copy of my questions, but I just want to say in closing that the southwestern neighborhood I live in, Crowfoot, is known for rolling hills, expansive green spaces, and stunning views of the surrounding countryside. Custom-built homes, spacious estates, and large lots for those seeking a rural atmosphere. As our representatives, I know the council will take the initiative in presenting local needs to higher government levels. All of our purpose as citizens should be to promote livability, stability, and improvement of the city's neighborhoods. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to our community's veterans who have selflessly served our country. Veterans of our military services have put their lives on the line to protect the freedoms that we enjoy. They have made a difference in the world, and I hope to make a small difference in my local neighborhood and community. Thanks for your time.
Okay. Any questions for Amanda? I personally would just like to compliment you on the depth and the extent of your questions. Honestly, made me think.
I appreciate how well
Thanks.
researched and thought that you put in.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
So, thank you. Okay, we don't want to overlook anybody. Is there anybody else that wishes to testify that maybe didn't fill out a testimony card? If you could fill out a testimony card and submit it, please. 2 of you. So if you would like to testify, we would need a testimony card.
Leave it here and then state your name and.
Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to come out here and hear more about this.
Could you state your name, please?
Robert Shaw.
Thank you.
And my wife and I, we have the property right there on Crowfoot Road. That's right adjacent to this new proposed subdivision. I think growth is great. I think the only one issue I have is that they talked about doing 0 lot lines. My wife and I spent, well, my wife's born and raised in Honolulu. I spent a lot of years there, and they have quite a few 0 lot line properties. And I've always noticed that promotes bad neighbors. Because inadvertently, some kid is over there with their basketball or tennis ball, and he's banging up the side of someone else's house, which is right there, part of their yard. So other than the 0 lot line that they're asking for, I think it would be a fine opportunity for the community. So that's the only issue I have is 0 lot lines, make it for bad neighbors.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
And one more.
My name is Chet Hutchinson, and I live on Cascade, or on Hillview Drive, and the fire access goes by the side of my property. I was born in Lebanon. I'm 84 years old. I've lived here for 80 years, and I spent 4 years as a carpenter apprentice in Seattle. And I worked construction of one type or another my whole life, including a general contractor, but I didn't do residential type work. I've been in the house 55 years. I raised my 2 daughters there, and that Crowfoot Road has been a mess the whole time. When the Crowfoot School, I'm just trying to inform, Crowfoot School was there, they made them put in a sidewalk, which was extending the asphalt a bit and putting a row of park block type things to make a bit of a curb so that it was reasonably decent to walk. But the kids had trouble getting to bicycle to high school, and you're not doing any consideration of fixing like a bike path, a walkway. Now, going on back to town, when you put in that development and made a turnoff on Crowfoot, you fail to put in a left turn lane. It's just ridiculous. And now you go up to the other intersection, and that's not anything to brag about either. So that whole road needs to be addressed before you put in any subdivisions. You need to get a left turn lane. You need to do something about people. The speed isn't the big issue. It's just that people, animals, bicycles, children are just not very compatible with that road there. Like I say, I've been driving it in that area for 55 years. And the other thing I wanted, and I called in the last minute, and you have development fees. In North Albany, my daughter, I just built a new home on a lot that was rated for 2 homes. They just put 1 on it because there had been previously an existing home. They weren't required to pay a development fee. But if they were to put 2 houses on that, they would have had to pay an $80,000 development fee. That's to go through and fix the thing they were talking about, the road, the school, the police, parks, and those type of things. Now, what is the development fee for this new addition?
There are system development charges that are required for each lot to be paid.
That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, it is dependent on the type of dwelling.
Yeah.
I will be honest with you, I do not know the number off the top of my head, but you are welcome to call our offices and they would be happy to give you estimates.
Well, I'm kind of slow thinking about it, but yesterday I did call to ask and I didn't get any reports. But I would like to know because I've seen so many developments, including the spot where I live. I paid $1,000 for my lot and I put in a legal septic tank and it never worked. So you know, those kind of things, like tell it worked and when I had it redone for $12,000, but we lived there long enough to pump 1,000 gallons of water into the tank and then it flooded. And we need to avoid them kind of situations. I think we've taken care of those in pretty good order. But there's others, that, like I say, that Crowfoot Road has been bad forever.
Yeah, so system development charges for a single family lot, and I'm just gonna be in round figures, it's anywhere from $16,000 to $19,000. That includes your storm drainage, sanitary sewer hookup, your water, parks, and streets.
Yeah.
So that's about what each lot generates
Mhm.
back there.
That doesn't seem to compare with the 80,000 they're charging in North Albany.
I would agree. It's hard to make
I'm
up
not,
much
I'm
ground.
thinking that might be a little steep, but.
Yeah, I would
but
think so too.
Still.
You're giving us ideas on how much we should be charging.
I think we can go
if you-
79.
If you can get that, you can do a lot for the schools. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Okay, with that then, I would give the applicant an opportunity to rebut if they so choose.
Thank you. So Laura LaRock again with Udall Engineering. I want to thank the folks that came out tonight to provide testimony on the subdivision and share their concerns. I will touch on a few. So a lot of the issues that are bringing up are very broad-based. They're community-wide issues. They might not necessarily be directly as a result of development. Items that just need to be improved overall, and I think they're just bringing awareness to that because you are representatives of the city. It could be a good time to talk about Crowfoot Road and the roadway jurisdiction of it. So that is, as my understanding, is not a city maintained road. So for folks that have concerns or want to provide some improvement recommendations, there really is the avenue to pursue would be the roadway department, attending the county commissioner meetings and expressing these concerns. Because ultimately, they would be the ones that create change. On this particular one, as we already mentioned, there was a traffic study that was performed that took a look at intersections. So not just the ones closest to the site, but 5 within the area. And we looked at it max development potential. So there are recommendations on there. Some of the items that are being expressed today are above and beyond what's recommended in the classification study based on the development impacts from it. Another kind of common theme that I'm hearing is about school capacity and having concerns about school districts. So the school, just like the city, has planning efforts where they take a look at population projectives. They look to see what their building capacity is today in terms of employees and building space, what the projected number of population is going to be, including students. They base their facility improvements based on those as well. So they're forward thinking as well. It's not uncommon if there was capacity issues with a school district, the district boundaries get relocated, items change just to accommodate the demand of certain communities. So again, another avenue to talk and maybe express concerns to be the school board and to talk about those at that level. On this one, because the development is a phased development, there's not going to be a direct overnight impact to the school district. So the school district is informed about the development. They look at population projections, even if development proposal wasn't on the table, to make sure that they have adequate. So don't expect any school capacity issues. We're also hearing a lot of concerns about just a change in the lifestyle or the feel of the neighborhoods that they're living in. Out broadly in this area, the project itself is within the city limits. To the east is also all property on the east and west site is in the urban growth. It's not in the city limits yet, but it has been identified for future development growth. The city has additional land. We don't have a rural feel now, that's projected to change in the future. So while I feel for that change and how that would feel, be a neighbor within this community, those are within the city boundaries and how growth to develop is guided by the development code. There's a lot of process that goes into developing. That's the three main points I just wanted to clarify. Are there any comments that came up that
I'm curious, so there's the trail, there's the basketball court and stuff. The comment made about school bus sheltering and an appropriate place for children to muster for school bus. Is there any consideration for that currently, or could there be potentially in the future based off of those comments?
Yeah, I think there's always potential to have a conversation. We're at the planning phase at this stage, so I'm going to be completely honest and say I'm not sure how shelters and locations are selected throughout the city. What I can say is that the development is improved for the apparatus. The bus needed to go through the subdivision, it would have adequate space to turn around cul-de-sacs or at those T intersections. So if busing was needed to be somewhere located in the subdivision, we'd have adequate room to turn around. Designed for even longer.
Any other questions for Laura? Okay, thank you, Laura. So with that, then, we will close the public testimony portion of our hearing. All further discussion will be amongst the planning commissioners and the staff. So we've talked a lot about the specifics. I'd like to hear from you as far as the project. Are you comfortable with the project? Are you comfortable that the criteria has been addressed and met?
I think the criteria has been met. But I'd like to say something to the folks out here in the audience. I know how you feel. I've been here 35 years. I don't want to see Lebanon explode. Nobody does. We all think about the days that, you're able to drive across town in 5 minutes. Now it's 15. So most of us sitting up here have been here all of our lives. And I just want to say, we know how you feel. But there are guidelines that we have to follow and things that we have to do, whether we like to do it or not. And I just wanted to say, I know how you feel.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
I wanted to add on to that too. I've heard all of you and I sympathize with all of you and understand where you're coming from. And much like has been explained, oftentimes the decision we make is not the decision of our heart, but the decision that we have to make because of the guidelines that are set forth before us. But thank you.
Okay, any other concerns, Marcellus?
Yeah, so I'm one of those people, just like a lot of you people out there, that have expressed concerns about, wanting Lebanon to kind of remain how it is and not get, turned into Portland or something. The property owner has a right to develop their property. That's a consideration as well. And I get that as well. And in submitting the application, they are doing so in accordance with existing city code, et cetera. and it is their right to, to request this property to be developed. That said, there's a request here for some deviations, and that means that they are wanting to not follow, or they're wanting exceptions to the existing and established rules. And I don't know that we have to grant those deviations. You know, we do have the need to let this owner develop the property. That is their right. But I don't think we need to grant all these waivers. They knew that they were purchasing wetlands when they bought it. And they knew what the existing code was. You know, they know about the 500 square foot requirement on corner lots, et cetera. And in presenting this application, they're asking us, the planning commission, exceptions here, and I don't feel like we have to grant that. And I don't know that granting that would actually be good for the city overall. And I think there's a whole bunch of people out here that would not want that granted either. And you know, I just don't feel that the city overall is going to be well served by granting this. I could be mistaken in that opinion. There's some things here about having greater open space, but if you got a whole bunch of townhouses in that development, I think that's, you're giving one thing and taking it away from with the other hand. You're cutting off the end of the rope and then tying it right back to itself. So I don't feel like we're actually in granting these things. I don't feel like we would actually truly be serving these stated objectives.
Okay, so your opinion is that you'd rather not authorize the deviations?
Correct.
Okay.
The other thing is we're going to have additional development going on, and what we do here on this first one sets the tone, the precedent for all future. And there's, I'm sure, going to be more right in that same area as was mentioned. You know, there's empty lots that are
Okay.
next to it.
Anybody want to speak to that?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Laura said the reason for those deviations were to preserve the wetlands that are around there, and that a standard approval is the average lot size. So some of them will deviate and be less than, but then some of them are more, and that their goal was to be sensitive to the wetlands and preserving them and having open space. That's what I heard her say.
I guess I don't understand. The wetlands were already there. They knew they were there. The argument of their being preserved, they were likely to be preserved anyway, just because of the cost of the mitigation and everything else. Or at least that was my takeaway. I don't. Yes, I'm in favor of leaving the wetlands undisturbed or as much as possible, but we're already talking about filling in some of these lots to make them buildable, et cetera. So, I mean, the way I look at it is there was always going to be wetlands that were left undisturbed just because of the economics of trying to develop them.
Okay, anybody else want to speak to that?
Well, my personal feeling is that for the last 5 years, we've been approving apartment complexes and 3-story ones. I mean, it just seems like that's all we've been doing. And somebody comes along and they want to build houses. And wow, this is cool. I'm excited. We're going to build houses instead of apartments now. And so that was my, initial feeling. I don't think the developer is being too unreasonable in their request for their waivers or variances. But let me ask the staff this. If we did not approve it because of these waivers and variances, what would happen? What would the developer do?
So let me just take this moment, because you gave me the mic, to do some definition clarifications here. This is not a variance request. We are not making findings for a variance. In the plan development application procedures, it specifically allows, as part of that review, it specifically says as part of a plan development that the planning commission may approve specifically as part of subdivision lots. It may approve a reduction in the minimum area, width, depth, and frontage requirements in subdivision lots as part of a plan development if the overall design and amenities of the proposed project outweigh any adverse impacts that may result from the reduction in the minimum area, width, depth, and frontage requirements for the lots. So I think it's the question of whether or not, what are the adverse impacts of the reduction requests versus the benefits that you're getting associated with the project as a whole. I cannot speak to whether or not the project will exist if you do not grant the amendments. I cannot speak to whether or not the project would pencil if you do not grant the amendments and they have to go and mitigate additional wetlands. You heard from the applicant their justifications, and in the staff reports, you have the proposed findings that identify, as part of the proposed modifications, these amendments provide the flexibility in the design of the lots to build around the wetlands to preserve as much of it in place. And in exchange, you're providing on-site amenities with the trail and the recreational spots with the half-court basketball recreation area that are not otherwise being provided as part of a regular subdivision. So you have trade-offs that are being provided. You have adverse conditions that are being proposed to be mitigated in exchange. And so again, this is not a variance. This is a tool that is authorized as part of a plan development application that you have the ability to, as a planning commission, authorize if you feel that the adverse impacts are appropriately addressed. Other than that, I can't speak to whether or not the project exists or not.
Can you speak to the fact that this tool that they are using?
Yes. So last year, the Planning Commission and the city went through the housing production strategy process, right? As part of the housing production strategy process, one of the main tools that the Planning Commission and the city identified as a point of interest was the small lot, single family home subdivision concept, right? Which was to authorize smaller single family home lots where you could build detached single family homes on lots smaller than 5,000 square feet. That would provide the flexibility to not have to, what we currently require is to do attached homes or townhomes, or do the funky 0 lot line that causes bad neighbors. And this tool, with the flexibility that is provided as part of the plan division application, preemptively authorizes that type of tool that we are ultimately planning on implementing as part of the housing production strategy.
Thank you. That clarifies a lot.
All right, any other comments? I would say, and I guess I'm going to throw this out as a question. The one part that gives me a little bit of a heartburn is the corner lots. At the very minimum, a 40-foot corner lot, most likely, well, I'm concerned about, I guess, the clear vision area, because they'll be backing, most likely, backing onto a street within 40 feet of an intersection. That concerns me a little bit. And that is primarily the reason that the corner lots are bigger lots, is for that clear vision area and for the safety in conjunction with the intersection. So that part does give me a little bit of heartburn. Yeah, I'm assuming in your discussions, that clear vision area was addressed.
Yeah, so as part of our review of the entire subdivision, we reviewed every single lot in the review. And as part of a condition of consideration, we actually identified one lot where we identified you actually had to specifically place a driveway to appropriately address that concern. That was a corner lot. And so we reviewed every single lot to make sure that either a condition was placed to ensure that the lot was preemptively designed to appropriately address that, or we knew that the lot was of an appropriate size where you could automatically design it in a manner to where you will be able to meet those clear vision and sight distance requirements on the way that it was designed. And we still need to do every single review. Every single property, you will have an engineered site plan and a building plan review, where the engineering department and the planning department and building department will review every single lot to make sure it still meets that requirement. Every single property on a corner lot still needs to meet the 10-foot setback on one side and the 15-foot setback on the other side. And so by nature, those setbacks meet and create those standards for that clear vision to be created. And that driveway is going to then have to be situated to meet engineering standards for the driveway separation from a corner.
So, and fencing and shrubbery
All of that.
also restricts that.
Yes, and that's already preempted in our code anyway.
Okay.
I have kind of a two-part question. So the first is, moving forward, if this is approved and goes through all three phases, and then potentially the developer wants to develop the land next to it, does that trigger an additional traffic study?
Yes.
Yes, it would.
Okay. And then at what point in development or urbanization does the county road become a city road, if at all?
We hope never.
Open up that can.
Sorry.
So actually with this one, this is unique. So what we are going to do if the subdivision goes through, we are going to take jurisdiction of Crowfoot Road, a portion of it, not all of it. It makes more sense for us. Plus, it was kind of a deal that we worked out with Lane County in terms of some right-of-way stuff. So we'll take the portion out front, and that portion will become city street. And then, like I said earlier, we're looking at ways to do improvements down there, and searching grants. And at some point when the whole street gets taken over, then Lane County and the city we're already setting it up.
So it
we've
is at
got
least a thought, and
utilities.
it's something that's in plan.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
If it became city jurisdiction, one of the common comments that I was hearing is the safety of that road. There's no bike paths, there's no sidewalks. There's a lot of youth in that area walking, or potentially needing to walk to Cascade, or not Cascade, excuse me, Green Acres, excuse me, Seven Oak, good grief, because they can't bus, obviously. They're too close for busing options. And so if that got adopted into the city jurisdiction, would those issues be addressed?
Well, yeah, so with every development, we require pedestrian access. So the north side of Crowfoot, there's already a pedestrian path there from View Lane to South Main Road. So that will extend all the way back to the Crowfoot Cascade Central intersection at some point in the future. So that will happen, and sidewalks will be developed as it continues to grow. The problem is, and I think somebody said it tonight, the growth is painful because you can't do it all up. It's kind of choppy. So you're not getting everything you want right up front. We can't condition stuff that doesn't really meet the nexus of that property. So we condition what's in front of the property and get what's required, but past that, unless there's a safety mitigation like with the TIA that would vet it out, then there's really not much we can do other than wait for the next parcel to develop.
Okay, so do you feel you have sufficient information to make a decision?
Yes.
Okay, and I think I already asked this, but I'm going to ask it again. Do you feel that the criteria has been addressed and met?
Yes.
And most heads are nodding affirmatively. All right, so is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I'll make a
I'll make a
motion to
motion.
approve.
Okay, Dave?
I move that the planning commission approve the proposed plan development, PD 2401 and subdivision S 2402, adopting the written findings contained in the staff report with the conditions of development, and direct staff to draft an order of decision incorporating the findings and conditions of approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned and second. Is there any further questions? Okay, all those then in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign.
Opposed? Or
Okay, motion carries. And let's take about a 5-minute break. Again, I want to thank
there's two people saying different facts, you can decide which facts are.
And I let them, because I have way too many other, yeah, I'm the co-chair for the Strawberry Festival.
You got your hands full.
So my plate, let me know how I get home. I'll let them worry about it. Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
We need volunteers. For Strawberry Festival.
Yeah, it's
Who's
pretty good.
the director of the fest?
Who's the chairperson?
Yeah.
The interim right now is Gary Dabrowski.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I knew they were looking for one.
Going in there. I didn't read anything.
No, I didn't see anything. In fact,
I didn't see
remember
anything.
Kelly said that there is, no, we don't know what they're gonna build there.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Right.
Cummins is the one that's developing it, right? Is that Mr.
I got Kelly lit up.
That owns Fisher Express?
Was that right?
So let's save that for commission comments. We may be out of line here a little bit.
No, actually, you've already made your decision, so you're not deliberating on anything, so.
All right, so he says we can discuss it.
I've relaxed my
It's his
opinions.
fault.
I've relaxed my opinions over time. I've been doing this a while. My first planning commission, I would have said,
Oh, believe me, when I adjourned it, he says, you can't do that. You gotta go through a motion process.
So our
that was
last,
right after I read Robert's Rules of Order.
It's Robertson's rules of order.
our last meeting
Some exciting
regarding
reading.
the subdivision off of Walker Road, that one, I didn't realize that the woman who was here protesting, so was the one who sold it. I
Ah,
had
that's
no
funny.
idea.
Just recognize, however, that we are still online
Yes.
for your comments.
Yep, and we're being recorded.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
She should have put covenant in there.
exactly. I was wondering, that was gonna be my question. Why wasn't there
Skylar, that's the
Closure.
advantage of being on the planning commission for a long time like you've been.
All right, let's go back to work.
all right, back to work.
In the absence of cookies, we might as well.
I bought
Hint,
cookies
hint.
and you did meet them.
That's
So I
right.
never brought them again.
I brought
Yep.
them before too. And
You didn't give me a warning.
I'm not just waiting. I think there was a couple.
I
All
should've
right,
brought them
so-
in.
Like four
Hey,
different people.
what's that gavel for?
Exactly.
I have never used it. All right, let's open planning or a public hearing, planning file CPTA 24-01. And because this is comp plan text amendment, there is no conflict of interest or bias or so forth. I'm going to turn it over, Ron, for a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner and the rest of the Planning Commission. So what we've got before you tonight here is a proposed amendment to the city's transportation system plan. We currently have a transportation system plan that's been adopted since 2018. It's intended to capture a 20-year window of planning and growth. From time to time, we get locations that don't show up in the TSP or didn't get studied, or development occurs that we didn't think was going to occur, and voila, that project's not in the TSP, and so you're kind of stuck. Because if you want funding, or if you need funding, or if you want to use SDCs on it, it's got to be part of this plan. So we got an intersection like this. It's the Weldwood Cascade intersection there at Walmart. Basically, we had a transportation impact analysis done when we did Colonial Pause, if you guys remember back to that. It vetted out that there was no offsite mitigation that needed to be done. It did recommend some channelization there at the Walmart intersection to prevent the left turns. There's a potential and had some left turn crashes there from people leaving Walmart due to the amount of traffic that's using the intersection. So what we did, once we did that, I didn't really care for the channelization idea. It was going to be about $150,000 to channelize traffic, and we're looking at it as kind of a short-term solution to a long-term problem. So we hired Kittleson back, said, hey, would you guys look at this as for a traffic signal? Would it be possible? Because back when the dentist and Walmart actually built there, they collected money for a traffic signal at that intersection. And I wasn't part of that, but they did collect money for a traffic signal at the intersection. So we had Kittleson come in and do another traffic impact analysis along with signal warrant analysis, and it vetted out that there would never be a scenario in which we'd meet warrants for a traffic signal. So I wasn't done there yet. It's like, well, okay, what's next? Can we do something different? So we looked at a roundabout, and they did a conceptual on a roundabout and said, hey, you know what, this would fit this very nice. It would flow with traffic. I guess back up a little bit, one of the other reasons that you couldn't have a signal there is you're way too close to the highway signal. So you're going to back up traffic out onto the highway. So that was another primary reason for not having a signal. So we had them do a roundabout conceptual. We like that idea. And so then I actually put them under contract to do a 30% design. I think those drawings are in your packet tonight of what that would look like. The reason we had them do a 30%, any grant that you're going after, you've got to be kind of prepared. You got to know how much right of way you've got to buy. Will it work before you do that? So we jumped out in front of that and got a 30% design. So by adding this project or amending the current transportation system plan and adding this as a identified project, what it does is it puts us in position to go after grants. It also puts us in position to go back to our SDC committee and determine what percentage of growth could be allocated to this. I'm going to guess that it's not going to be 100%, but it's going to be some percentage that we can use as a match for a grant. We've even looked at things such as tying this intersection with the complete build out of Cascade with the Cascade Crowfoot Central roundabout as one giant project. There are some grants out there that would cover that. That's a big hill to climb, but Linn County's also offered to participate once we take jurisdiction of that. So there would be some sharing of roadway funds there and whatnot. So what we're recommending is that you all add this to the TSP. I believe it's going to be project number D42, which I believe that's what it was. Kelly, is that correct?
Sounds great.
Yeah. And with that, I won't go into any more detail, but I sure will answer any questions you have.
All right, does anybody know what he's talking about? Good.
Sometimes he knows what, no, not very.
I do not like that intersection, so this is refreshing.
I hate roundabouts, but it's better than what we deal with right now.
And we're talking single lane roundabout.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, for you, we'd probably make a multi-lane.
No.
If you want. There's not room to make a multi-lane. No, I don't like multi-lane either. And, you know, roundabouts are one of those things when you first drive one, you go, oh my gosh, these things are terrible. But as you get used to them, I think in low speed areas, I think they function really well. You don't have to have the impact of a traffic signal. Yeah, you get some rear end crashes, but I mean, you're going to have crashes at the intersection anyway, right? I mean, that's inevitable from driver error. But this is a safe way to do it.
All right, any other questions?
Any idea on what you're going to put in the middle of it?
That's you.
So no, to answer your question, no. I think it would be a definitely a mountable roundabout curb, right? Because you're going to have trucks going in and out of Walmart, and I mean, they're going to drag their trailer over the top of it. So you want something that's mountable. We want something that's low maintenance. So if we're looking for landscaping out there, no. It's probably going to be hardscaped, and I don't know, maybe we'll put a statue out in the middle of it. I don't know. To answer your question, no, we have no idea what we do.
Or an old antique tractor or something.
Yeah, somebody would hit it for sure.
Try to do that.
All right, is there any concerns about adding this to the TSP? Does anybody wish to make a motion?
Hang on. Uh-oh. I think we have to do a public hearing, right? Isn't it a public hearing?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay.
Past his bedtime.
Yeah, it's past everybody's bedtime.
Well, I'll make a motion.
Go for it.
I move that the planning commission recommend approval of the comprehensive plan text amendment for the minor amendment to the transportation system plan to the city council based on the written findings in the staff report and direct staff to draft an order of recommendation incorporating the findings and conditions of approval. That was a mouthful.
So you can do the public hearing now. You can open it up for the public hearing.
You always bring up the details.
Well, I was getting stink eye from Kelly over there.
So do we actually should probably go through that process, shouldn't we?
Probably should ask people if they are
Okay.
in favor or
Could you withdraw
opposed.
your motion for a moment?
No, you can do it out of order.
Do I have to read it?
All right.
No,
Withdraw it?
If you want to leave it there, we need a second.
I-
he already
Oh,
said.
you second? Okay, thanks, Don. All right. Well, I knew you was in a hurry to get out of here,
After the
Kelly.
public testimony, he can withdraw it if he changes his mind.
Okay. So with that, then, we will open the public testimony portion of our hearing and invite anybody to come forward. They don't need to sign in, but testify either in favor or in opposition of the application, of the proposal.
There's the public testimony.
Okay, seeing no movement then, we will close the public testimony portion, and we have a motion on the table.
Motion stands.
Okay, and the second stands. So any further questions? All right, then, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. I will turn it over to staff for the next agenda item.
Okay, I believe the next agenda item is our by code annual planning commission reorganization.
That sounds lengthy.
No, it's not. So, by code, we are supposed to leave it up to the planning commission if you would like to reorganize our two people who are chair and vice chair. So what we will do is I will open up for nominations for chair. You still have the ability to either A, leave Dawn as chair, B, put Lori as chair, or C, open it up for nominations for anybody else to be chair. We will take multiple nominations and then vote on those nominations. At that point in time, whoever is chair will open it up for vice chair nominations. And Lori is eligible to maintain vice chair. Dawn is eligible for vice chair as well, as is anybody else on the planning commission. Are the instructions clear? Okay, so at this point in time, I will open up the floor for nominations for chair of the planning commission.
I would like to nominate the current holders of those two positions.
Second.
All in favor?
To change your process, Kelly.
I'm good with that process. Do we have other nominations?
Are they wanting to stay?
I don't think they have a choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we asked you guys how
You haven't been doing this long enough.
Well, when you signed up, it was a life sentence.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice.
You did, yeah, you
No,
did great.
I feel like more comfortable.
Yeah.
That's true. You have
That's
this
true. But no.
I'm fine if you guys are fine with it.
Okay, so we have a nomination. So now we need a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we retain Don Robertson and Lori Gehrig
Panarowski.
Chair and
in
co-chair.
their current positions. I was going to butcher it, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
In their current
Happens a lot.
positions.
Good enough. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, third, fourth.
I'll take Baxter. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Negative Ghost Rider.
Okay.
Was that,
All right.
did you oppose?
No, I said negative Ghost Rider.
Not a public hearing.
Commissioner comments?
I still have another item.
Oh, go for it.
The agenda was amended. I'm not sure if you guys got the email or not, but we amended the agenda to add another item because I forgot. So we have received the grant from DLCD to now do all the code updates, well, some of the code updates associated with the housing production strategy. And so as part of that, we need a planning commissioner rep to sit on the advisory committee. Or up to a maximum of 2. 1 is more than enough, but if 2 would like to serve, we're fine with that. So anybody who wants to fight for it, the floor is yours.
I nominate Charlotte Malloy.
Oh, because I opened my mouth.
So I will tell you this, I sat on it the last time we did the code amendments. It is very educational. So don't be afraid of it because you get down into the weeds a lot, but it's very educational as far as our code and how it's put together.
It will be not as nasty as Don's service on it because he did the entire code. So this is only 14 months. It will be 5 project advisory committee meetings. Those meetings will probably be a bit longer, maybe 2 hours or so. You will be tortured along with Ron and I through the whole process. He's very excited about it, regardless of his hemming and hawing. But it's a 5 meeting requirement, basically. Those are going to be meetings based off of probably doodle polls, based off of the ability of the whole committee to participate. So it might be evening meetings, it might be afternoon meetings. See how we have to make it work. My goal would be, selfishly during my work hours.
Well, Charlotte, what do you say?
I don't mind doing it. I like to learn.
Okay, and maximum of 1 more.
Maximum 1 more if people would like to.
I think Tina should do it.
Tina's already doing a couple of other things.
Misery loves company.
When does this committee start?
Do you want to do it?
Probably June.
I'm
Festival will be over.
naturally interested in it, but if somebody else would rather.
So Lori just volunteered.
Oh,
I heard it too.
I heard it.
I like to learn as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds great.
Does anybody want to take mine?
You don't get to volunteer that away.
Those shoes would be too big to fill.
Oh, no, not really. I don't know anything about planning. I'm just.
Okay, thank you very much. Ron's done talking. And the last thing I have is we will probably have a meeting next month. We're waiting for 1 application to come in and I'll have another discussion item. That's it.
All right. Any commissioner comments, questions, even about the process tonight? I thought that was very thorough. I thought you guys did a great job.
Lori, Charlotte, thank you for volunteering for that.
Just a comment, the thing that was brought up about the school bus shelters, et cetera. I think that's a really good thing to pursue. And I don't know if that's something that could be in future included a part of traffic studies or where it would fit. But I feel like that is a thing that should be considered, especially with these larger developments.
So we used to do that. We used to require bus shelters for various developments. And we quit doing it because, one, we don't dictate where the bus stops are. And inevitably, we would put the bus shelter in a spot, and then they're a big source of vandalism. Going out, placement on them. So it just depends on how the bus, I'd be more inclined to put a bus shelter in for our links program than for the school district because it's so variable where they have bus stops. And in a lot of places they have bus stops, there's no place for a shelter. You could put one in a subdivision, but but we used to do it.
I actually drove school bus for 4 years. I was a school bus driver for the Lebanon School District for 4 years, and I can tell you that the school bus stops change all the time. So to put a shelter somewhere next year, the bus stop could be moved 2 blocks down. And so it's just based off need and how many kids in that area. So
to have a shelter, but it is concerning if there is any, and they would take that into consideration when they're picking school bus stops on Crowfoot to make sure that it's a safe place, but.
Well, and do remember in the subdivision, we are building out sidewalks along the whole thing, and so the kids will have a place to congregate, at least on sidewalks and not in the middle of a dirt patch.
Well, even just, and I get the point about, the school district's gonna do what they do, but, spots, because I mean, if you have a school bus sitting at the mouth of that, development, I mean, it's gonna clog the whole thing up and, it's just not a good deal. But if you have just a 40-foot section scooped out with asphalt, for a school bus to pull over, that's gonna improve flow and safety and all kinds of things.
Good point.
Yeah, and we can look at that. I mean, when a school bus stops, everybody stops. So it's all plugged up, right? And like I said, we used to do that, but I mean, they never got used. So we just quit doing it. It's an extra cost. It's an added cost. One for the developer and two for us to maintain, because they do get through.
Well, a bus shelter would definitely get used. Homeless people.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, anything else? We are adjourned.